You wake up, but you can't move. Not a little stiff, not groggy, completely frozen. You try to call out, nothing comes. You try to sit up, your body doesn't respond, and somewhere in the room, or on your chest, or at the edge of your vision, something feels wrong. Deeply, primitively wrong, like you are not alone. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it releases. You gasp, you sit up, your heart is hammering, and you're completely alone in a completely normal room. Most people who experience this spend years thinking something is wrong with them, that they're losing their mind, that what they felt, that presence, that pressure, that terror, was supernatural. It wasn't. But what it actually is might disturb you more, because sleep paralysis isn't a glitch, it isn't a disorder, and it isn't your imagination running loose in the dark. It is your brain caught between two worlds simultaneously. And what happens inside your nervous system during those moments is one of the most extreme biological events a human being can experience while technically being safe. Let's start with what most people get completely wrong. The common belief is that sleep paralysis is rare, something that happens to a small number of people with unusual sleep conditions or extreme stress, something on the edges of normal human experience. Research disagrees entirely. Scientists estimate that somewhere between 25 and 40% of people will experience sleep paralysis at least once in their lifetime. Some studies place recurring episodes even higher in specific populations. Students, shift workers, people with irregular sleep schedules, people under chronic stress. This isn't rare, this is common. And the reason most people never talk about it is because the moment they try to describe it, the paralysis, the presence, the inability to breathe properly, they sound like they're describing something that belongs in a horror film, not a doctor's office. So they stay quiet and they stay confused. Here's what your brain is actually doing. Every night when you enter REM sleep, the stage where your most vivid dreaming happens, your brain does something deliberate and extraordinary. It paralyzes your body, not partially, completely. Your brainstem sends active inhibitory signals to your spinal motor neurons. Your voluntary muscles, the ones you consciously control, are switched off. Neuroscientists call this REM atonia, and it exists for a very specific reason. Without it, you would physically act out every dream you have. You would run, fight, fall, flail, all while unconscious, all in your bed. REM atonia is the mechanism that keeps you safe while your brain experiences things that feel completely real. But occasionally, something goes wrong with the timing. Your conscious mind wakes up before your body does. You cross back into awareness. You can think, you can feel, you can perceive the room around you, but the paralysis signal is still running. Your muscles are still locked, and your brain, suddenly aware and suddenly trapped inside a body that won't respond, does what any threatened human brain does. It panics. Now here is where it gets deeply fascinating and deeply unsettling. When your brain enters panic inside a paralysis state, it doesn't just generate fear, it generates hallucinations. And not random, chaotic ones. Remarkably consistent ones, across cultures, across centuries, across continents that have never been in contact with each other. Researchers studying sleep paralysis hallucinations found something that initially made no sense. People all over the world, from isolated tribes to modern city dwellers, reported almost identical experiences during episodes. A dark figure in the room, a crushing pressure on the chest, the feeling of being watched, pinned, suffocated by something just out of clear sight. Different cultures invented different explanations for it. The old hag in British folklore, the Kanashibari demon in Japanese tradition, the jinn in Islamic cultures, the mare in Scandinavian mythology, which is literally where the word nightmare comes from. Every culture named it something different. Every culture described it the same. And the reason for that consistency is biological. When your brain is paralyzed and panicking, it activates a threat detection network so ancient it predates conscious thought. Your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, floods with activity. Your threat-sensing circuits begin scanning the environment for danger. But because you can't move, can't confirm what's real, and can't orient your body properly, your brain does the only thing it can. It constructs the threat. It manufactures a presence. It generates the sensation of weight on your chest because your breathing is actually slightly restricted during REM atonia. And your brain translates that physical reality into a narrative. Something is holding you down. Something is watching. Something is here. The hallucination isn't a product of a broken mind. It is your perfectly functional threat detection system, running at full capacity with no reliable information to work with. Your brain would rather create a monster than sit in unexplained danger. And now, the part that most people never hear. Sleep paralysis episodes aren't just terrifying in the moment. Researchers have found that people who experience frequent episodes show measurable changes in how their nervous system responds to perceived threat, even outside of sleep. Chronic sleep paralysis is associated with elevated baseline anxiety, hypervigilance during normal waking hours, and in some cases, the development of nocturnal panic disorder. Your body doesn't fully separate what happened at 3 a.m. from how it operates at 3 p.m. The terror your nervous system experienced, even inside sleep, even when nothing real was threatening you, registers as genuine trauma. Your amygdala doesn't file it under just a weird sleep thing. It files it under survival memory, and that has consequences. People who experience recurring sleep paralysis are significantly more likely to report daytime anxiety, difficulty feeling safe in their own body, hyper-awareness of physical sensations, and disrupted sleep anticipation, meaning they begin to fear falling asleep itself, which then disrupts their sleep architecture, which then increases the likelihood of more episodes. It becomes a loop your nervous system builds around fear. So what actually triggers it? Scientists have identified a clear cluster of risk factors. Sleep deprivation is the most consistent one. The less deep sleep you accumulate, the more chaotically your brain cycles through REM, and the more vulnerable you become to mistimed transitions. Sleeping on your back increases episodes significantly. Researchers believe this position affects airflow and REM breathing patterns in ways that raise the probability of the paralysis extending past the sleep boundary. Stress is another major accelerant. When your cortisol is chronically elevated, your sleep architecture fragments. Your REM cycles become unstable. The handover between sleep and waking, which should be seamless, becomes rough, unpredictable, and sometimes catastrophically mistimed. Irregular sleep schedules collapse the body's circadian certainty, and without that certainty, your brain loses the precise timing it needs to coordinate the paralysis release before consciousness returns. There's also a documented genetic component. Sleep paralysis runs in families. If a parent experienced it, your probability is meaningfully elevated. Your nervous system may be structurally predisposed to slower REM atonia release, a biological setting, not a personal failing. But here's what changes everything about how you should understand this. Sleep paralysis has been experienced by astronauts during irregular sleep cycles in space.
by soldiers during combat-related sleep disruption, by new parents in the fractured early months of infant care, by high-performing executives running on chronic sleep debt. This doesn't happen to fragile people. It doesn't happen to people with broken brains. It happens when a perfectly functioning biological system gets pushed past the precision it needs to operate cleanly. Your brain is running one of its most sophisticated programs, coordinating consciousness, muscle control, sensory processing, and memory consolidation simultaneously across a razor-thin biological threshold. Sometimes that threshold gets crossed in the wrong order. And when it does, you end up awake inside a body that hasn't been told yet. Now the question that should be sitting with you. If your brain can construct a presence so convincing that entire civilizations across thousands of years of human history built mythology around it, what else is it constructing that you're accepting as real? The hallucination during sleep paralysis is vivid, physical, emotionally overwhelming, and completely false.
And your brain generated it in seconds, without your permission, without your awareness, and with total conviction. Sleep paralysis doesn't just reveal what happens when your body gets the timing wrong. It reveals exactly how much of your reality your brain is quietly building for you, and how little of it you're actually choosing. The room was empty. It always was. But your brain needed it not to be. And so, it wasn't.